Welcome to the February the 24th, 2004 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie. We have a wonderful show for you today as we're continuing on our celebration of Black History Month. And we're so pleased for our history tape number 509 to have a very special lady. Now, she is related to Grand Prairie in that she does not live in Grand Prairie, but she lives in a kinship area of Oak Cliff, but she covers all of Grand Prairie in many arenas as a very special staff writer for the Dallas Morning News. And we call it the Grand Prairie Morning News, and it comes out in print every once in a while, like on those special days on Thursday and Sunday that we look forward to, because Linda Jones always has something exciting to say. And Linda, we're so pleased to have you with us today, my dear.
Thanks a lot.
We're delighted. And we're going to begin our interview talking about the real Linda Jones. And with your permission, let's do a little kind of a mini genealogy and tell us about Linda for not many long years ago, but a few years back. Where were you born, Miss Linda?
I was born in Akron, Ohio.
Akron, Ohio. And would you name your parents, including your mother's maiden name, please, ma'am?
Yes, my mother is Geraldine Carroll. My father, Robert Jones, Jr.
Okay. And did you have brothers or sisters?
Yes, I'm the eldest of four. My brother's deceased. I have one brother and two sisters.
Okay. Would you like to name them and maybe tell us a little bit where they are?
All of my family's in Akron, Ohio. I'm the only gypsy. Right, I'm the only one that lives away. Yes, and my sister under me is Roberta Jones, named after my father, Robert. My brother was Gregory Jones, and I have a sister, Roxanne Jones, who's named after my grandmother.
Oh, your grandmother. And tell us a little bit about your grandmother. Where was she from?
She was from Youngstown. Well, actually, she lived in Youngstown, Ohio when I was a child.
When you were a child.
Right, right.
Did you get to visit with your grandmother when you were little?
Yes, we did, on holidays and, you know, sometimes during the summer and so forth. We visited.
She was
my
really kind of special in your life?
Yeah, they were what I call authentic grandparents, you know. They spoiled us. Exactly. So she and my grandfather did the right thing by spoiling us.
Spoiling you very, very well. Okay, and where did Linda go to school as a young person?
In Akron, I went to all public schools. I went to a school called Lane. Right now, it no longer exists. There are a bunch of homes there now where the school was. I went to Thornton Junior High, which no longer exists. There's a bunch of homes there where that used to be. And I went to South High School.
All right, but now you have the schools you've attended. Let's go back to this elementary school. When you started in elementary school, were you excited about leaving home and going out away from your parents? And
you know, I had no recollection of the excitement or anticipation. I just remember being in school.
You remember going?
I remember going and enjoying it, enjoying the school experience.
Was there a favorite, real special teacher or subject when you were in elementary?
There was a special teacher, Miss McLean, because she was like an aunt in a sense.
Yes.
Yeah, and she was stern. She wasn't mean. She was stern.
Okay.
And she made sure that we did our homework and those kinds of things.
Okay.
And in later years, favorite subject for me, I think I guess it would art and reading. For me,
because you could take that home and show and tell a lot of that, couldn't you?
Right.
All right, then on into the middle school. What happened there? And do you have any special events or teachers or subjects?
I'll say special teacher. I wouldn't say that he was particularly a nice, you know, you say you're a nice teacher, a favorite teacher. He's his most valued teacher, though, because he, Mr. Nathan, because he was really stern. And he made sure, it's one of those teachers you appreciate later, you don't appreciate at the time maybe, because they are stern and they want to make sure you get what you need to have. And he did. And I remember I learned how to write checks and, you know, write in my checkbook and so forth at that age, which was really special, and a lot of teachers weren't teaching those kinds of life skills in junior high school back then.
Yes.
So those
And then on into middle school.
well, that was in my middle school, but
That was
into
in
high
middle school?
school.
Yeah.
In high school, there was a Miss STEM who I appreciated quite a bit because she taught us Shakespeare and literature and things like that.
Oh, yes.
And I also appreciated her. Maybe I appreciated myself because I made sure that I got college prep classes.
Yes.
I wanted to learn a skill because my parents couldn't afford to send me to college.
All right.
So I knew that I would have.
We'd have to hustle, wouldn't we?
Right, right. And they instilled a good work ethic in us. So I wanted to take secretarial training in order to learn a skill. And when you do that kind of thing in my particular high school, they feel they'll put you in a vocational area
Yes.
as opposed to college prep. Well,
Yes.
I wanted both. I needed the vocation, but I certainly wanted the literature and all the other things. And the people in that class at that point weren't, there was a separation. And I pushed a little bit to make sure I got both college prep and the skill. And Miss STEM taught me. Had I not, I would not have been getting the literature and the Shakespeare and those kinds of things that I got.
And the basics you needed for college prep.
Right, that I needed.
That's wonderful.
Right.
And finally, graduating, what had been your very favorite thing in all of your high school years? Did you have a special honor? Were you the last in the class or first in the class?
I was somewhere in the middle.
Good. Oh, that's great.
Upper, but not the top 10,
Yes.
but certainly not at the bottom either. There were
Yes.
about 200 who graduated, and I was up in that upper fourth that graduated. And the favorite moment, I guess, was the special moment was graduating.
Getting
Was
out.
graduating, actually, and
Yes.
getting out, yes.
And did that make you feel lost now that you did not have a place to go, or were you ready to take the next step?
To college, but it was a strange period in the summer because I was so used to the routine of going to school.
Yeah.
Just that couple months where I wasn't doing anything other than I was working part-time jobs and so forth, but I didn't have that routine. It was unsettling for me for a minute,
Yes.
but then in a couple months I went to college.
All right, and tell me about your going into college. After you've left high school, where they made you study, you're going to a place now where you study on your own. How did you grab that?
That's interesting. It just happened. I went to Kent State. I went to Kent State, and it was about 16 miles away from my home, so I
Yes.
was able to be a distance away from home to have the college experience, but be close enough in case, I got
Yes.
kind of nervous and didn't think I could handle
Yes.
it. But fortunately, I was able to, keep going forward. I didn't get that homesick, but it was good to know that home was there in case I needed to.
Did you
go
know
and
what you
recharge.
wanted to even start studying when you went into Kent State?
At the time, when I was in school, secondary school and so forth, I studied violin too, and I wanted to actually, I entertained thoughts of music, but at the time, I didn't feel, as an African American child at that
Yes.
time, I didn't feel that I could get a career playing the violin.
Yes.
And I liked arts anyway, and I also liked writing a lot. My mother influenced me in that respect,
Good.
just with the writing of letters and so forth. So I went into journalism, but actually I went into photojournalism. And once again, I said I liked art,
Yes.
and I wanted to do photojournalism, but there came a point where I really couldn't afford the photo equipment.
Yes.
So I just went straight into journalism.
Into journalism.
And I shot pictures and so forth, and I did that, took photography, but it wasn't as expensive for me since I wasn't majoring in it.
Yes.
So that's what I did. I actually started out, I filled out the form saying social work because I felt, well, that's what we're supposed to put down. And I like people, I like interacting with people, so that's what I did the first quarter. But I changed my major immediately to photojournalism and then eventually to journalism. With a minor in Black Studies.
How wonderful. Getting a little bit of that history and culture you
Absolutely.
needed, right?
Absolutely.
That's good.
Absolutely.
And what happened during Kent State and after Kent State?
A lot of different things. I'm glad I went to college and lived on the campus to get that experience. I'm glad I went to mixed campus because it was a microcosm of society. So
Yes.
I was able to kind of prepare myself for society going out there. I was able to, I have an interest in international affairs in foreign cultures and things like that, particularly people of the African diaspora. And being at the college where I met people from the Caribbean and Africa and so forth, bought the things that I was reading alive. I was able to ask them questions about things that I read about their culture, and to sample their foods and to learn to cook some of those foods,
Yes.
which was pretty exciting. So the whole learning experience there was very beneficial for me. I enjoyed the college life.
Did you work at all during your college days? What did you do?
I supported myself through school, through loans, scholarships, work-study programs. Even when I became a senior, I was a counselor in the dorm. And there was an assumption that if you're a counselor in the dorm and they pay for your lodging and so forth,
Yes.
then your parents are sending the checks for the rest of the stuff. So we're not supposed to work.
Yes.
But I would slip out in the evenings to go work at Sears, in a
Gotta do that little
because I
extra.
needed the money. I needed the money. Like I said, home was there, but my parents couldn't afford to support me through college. But they supported me in every other way.
And before we leave college, we've done a real good picture, of a TV picture of your work at that you did at college, and now you're getting ready to get out. But before we get into your career after college, I wanted to thank one of the ladies at the Dallas Morning News, and that's Christy Lyles, because when I called the Dallas Morning News asking permission for you to come and be on our television show to celebrate Black History Month, I had to go through a routine with them. And so I want you to go back and tell Christy I really appreciate her, because not only did she do that, she got me a bio about a lady that is second to none, and I had some more good stuff to talk about and to prompt your mind to let us know the happenings along the way for Linda Jones. And so Linda, after graduating from college, what was your first experience out in the working world?
I moved to Washington, D.C.
Yes.
I visited there. I had been visiting, going to Howard University when they would have journalism conferences, to prepare myself for when I got out. And on one of the visits, I was so impressed with Washington, I decided that I wanted to live there.
Yes.
And at the time, I had no job prospects or anything like that, so what I did was sign up for sort of a post-undergraduate course to study politics in Washington. So, and the way I worked and supported myself through that was to take the work-study job. I was the photographer for the group, and I went there to study politics in Washington. And after that program was over for 10 weeks, the other students and so forth went back, and I stayed and made enough contacts to find a job there to stay. And I loved DC. You know, that was my first. So what I did was find a part-time job at U.S. News and World Report as an editorial assistant. And
that's in your bio here,
Right.
that you've just worked for all of these places, Newsday, Newsweek, Time, Black Enterprise, Heart and Soul, Essence, and Glamour magazines.
Oh,
you
those
got
were
it.
freelance. And those were where I did freelance pieces while I was
Yes.
working at newspapers, daily newspapers,
Yes.
full time.
That gave you a lot of experience, didn't it?
It did. Yeah.
That made you know whether you wanted to stay in journalism or not, didn't it?
Right, well, it's important in the business of journalism to grab all you can, and nothing goes to waste in terms of information. It's
How about
important,
this
so.
West African Press Syndicate and Africa News? Did you do editorials for them?
No, I did stories for
About
them,
the-
freelance stories. I spent some time in Africa, in West Africa, 3 months there, living in a village, and I wrote, when I came back, I wrote about my experiences, but I made some...
That hands-on.
Right. Serious hands-on in the village, not the wine and dine kind of set that...
Out at the nuts and bolts.
Right. I was in the villages working with the people as they work, and it was a good experience to write about.
I know that Christy told me that in 1994, before moving to Dallas, you worked at the Detroit News. Were you making a reverse back to old home grounds or anything, going to Detroit?
Actually, in a sense I did, because when I left Washington, I moved south to South Florida. So I worked in Miami and Fort Lauderdale at newspapers there. And then I wanted to be a little closer to my family in Ohio. So I accepted a job in Detroit, which Ohio and Michigan are close.
Yeah, close together.
So I was at the Detroit News as a general assignment reporter, then a feature writer there for a number of years.
Was that the fun place of all?
It's great.
Was it better than Washington, D.C.?
It was as good as.
As good as.
It was as good as, yeah, I think, right.
Then where?
From Detroit. Well, Detroit, I moved here.
You moved here?
I moved here 10 years ago.
And when you moved here, what brought you to Texas from Detroit, Michigan?
Well, there was an interest in having me here. There was a former editor of mine who worked in Detroit who told them about me and the kinds of stories that I wrote.
All right.
So there was communication over a period of time, and after that I accepted a job to come here and work.
To come here. And coming in from the cold north Detroit winds into Dallas, into the Dallas Morning News,
The weather
how were you
helped.
received?
I was received in well, and it was mixed. You know, I think because I came from some different places and had different perspectives and so forth, the reception was, sometimes there was sort of a question mark, I think, about where is she coming from and what is she doing. But overall, I've been here for 10 years, so overall, apparently things have been working okay.
Were you married or single, or do you have a personal family?
Single. My family, I have some family members here, distant family members.
Oh, I see.
Distant family members who I'm close to, but not first cousins and so forth like that. My immediate family is in Ohio.
Oh, still
but
in
I have
Ohio.
a wonderful family of friends here, incredibly wonderful family of friends.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And your first assignment was what? What's the first thing you did when you came to the Dallas Morning News?
Actually, my first
where did they assign you?
I was on my way to South Africa when I came here to cover the elections.
Oh, you were?
Because actually that's what I was gearing up and preparing to do when I was in Detroit. And that was in '94 when I came here. So when I came, I was actually I barely got settled before I was over in South Africa. There was a couple feature stories I had done before going over there when I came. But if my memory doesn't fail me, they were in preparation for that trip to South Africa to cover the elections.
That was good.
So yeah.
And getting back from that sojourn?
Getting back, that's when I got settled into Dallas. I still had my belongings in Detroit. I hadn't even moved into the state quite yet, but I was working in the features department there. So a number of things that I was covering had to do with people of color, particularly people of the African diaspora, different issues. There I like to really show that African Americans aren't a monolith, you know, where there's diversity within our culture. So I like ferreting stories out that were different and informative, and that would foster a better understanding of people who are of a different culture.
How tough are you in your research? I mean, really getting down to the bare bones and the nitty-gritty. You take a story and you have it in your mind. To what extent will you go to make this a happening? How long will you work on it?
Oh, something clicks and then you just sort of stick with it like a pit bull if it's a story that you really care about and
feel
so forth.
Moved about.
Right, about a person or a thing or an issue or something. Sometimes time doesn't allow you to do that, and you have to turn stories over pretty fast because we're talking daily newspapers.
Before coming to the Grand Prairie arena, was there a specialist area that you were in, the Dallas Morning News, other than just your stories?
Specialist area, meaning.
Another town or another area, like you cover
I was
Grand Prairie and
downtown.
Arlington now?
No, I was downtown, so I covered, my stories could have come from
any of them.
anywhere. It had to do with the person I was covering or the issue or things like that. But
what brought you to the Grand Prairie portion with the Arlington Grand Prairie News?
a decision by the Dallas Morning News.
So the big bosses decided you would be good out here in this area. When did you first come to our paper?
About 2 years ago now.
About 2 years ago.
It's been 2 years ago.
What was your first assignment? Do you remember?
Oh my God, no, I don't remember the first assignment.
All I know that you were everywhere.
You know, I don't remember the first assignment, and I feel like, I was everywhere.
You know you were everywhere, right?
But the people, I found the people here pretty special. You know, you're in a smaller place, but it's something when you're giving voice to people who maybe not have had as much of a voice before. And I always like ferreting out, my interest is more in international kinds of things, global kinds of things.
Yes.
And I like the challenge of finding those things in the local community, you know, because there's a lot of diversity in the local communities. Like even here, I noticed that there's more of a Latino population coming into the city of Dalworth, which has been predominantly, historically African American.
Yes.
So there's going to be different dynamics there going on in adjustment, communications, and things like that. So there's that diversity that always interests me.
You have the community of Arlington and all the in-between. You have two wonderful counties, Tarrant County and Dallas County, and you have Dalworth in between, which has been predominantly our real chief black community in Grand Prairie, Texas, and has a great historical significance that we're going to talk about in our next interview. Of all of the things that you have done, what has been probably not the priority thing that was issued to you, but that is done as much to satisfy your particular interest in it? Of all of those in Arlington and Grand Prairie, what has been your favorite subject?
In Arlington and Grand Prairie, I think the story about Bear Creek and the identity, sort of I don't want to say split personality, but two personalities sort of Bear Creek since the time it was annexed.
Yes.
You know, and the different issues between the Grand Prairie side and the Irving side. I found that pretty interesting historically, looking at where it was, where it's coming, and the dynamics there.
And since that area was the old Sowers community, and we talked about Sowers in the historical past, and sure enough, it turned out to be Irving, and the separation of Bear Creek, and the many people that have been really, really important in that area.
And I'm seeing a lot of the folklore and culture, like in a city like Dalworth and so forth. You see the guys sitting out playing dominoes and so forth, or sitting under the tree, and so much of that, the sitting under the tree culture is really interesting because it sometimes. Many times it's a reminder of what the elders used to do in the villages in Africa. These were the sort of open air aldermen, I call them, where they know a lot about what's going on. But they look like, maybe simple old guys, but they have a lot of wisdom and history and knowledge. And spending that time under there, you can learn a lot about the history and so forth of your communities.
Now, we're talking about this is going to tape on Wednesday night and on Friday night, but on Tuesday night, which is today that we're taping this show, you have a big assignment with the Chamber of Commerce, with the Caucasian community, and a mixture of all of the people that in the business world that are coming together in Grand Prairie. Do you find as much excitement in covering that as you would Bear Creek?
News is news and information is information, and that's what I like writing about. And I certainly write about Caucasians too.
All about, but your favorite, what you've been trained to do is in a little bit different arena. If you're going to help our boys and girls make the transitions and remember their culture and all of this, you want to say anything to the boys and girls, and look out at Richard and your camera here, and let's talk about.
Sure. just grab that information. Grab that information. Read as much as you can. Nothing goes to waste. None of the experiences that you have are useless experiences. So I just say, listen to your teachers. Take advantage of your education, please.
You have any word of wisdom to them about their parents, how important they are to them?
Oh my gosh, our parents, the people who raise us, who may not be our blood parents, but people who care for us, should be respected. They are our ancestors. They are the wise ones who want what's best for us. So I urge you to respect your elders in every way.
We have 3 minutes left on this interview, according to Juliana, and because Mr. Tovar cuts us off when it gets to time, he calls winding us down. I would like for you to talk just a little bit about what you're going to do when you grow up. What's next?
What I'm going to do when I grow up.
Are you going to write books? Are you going to teach? Are you going to continue on at this wonderful pace that you have going, covering Grand Prairie from so many different directions that it's hard to keep up with you?
Well, it's interesting. Recently, I completed a book in June, last June, and when my time permits, I'm promoting that book. And it's an outgrowth of a self-esteem project, an organization that promotes African-American cultural identity called A Nappy Hair Affair. And the name of the book is Nappyisms, Affirmations for Nappy-Headed People and Wannabes.
Oh, that is great. And I like that wannabe.
And it's been a lot of fun because once again, it's a way, it's the device to raise awareness about our culture and the significant, important things about our culture. And
now you're a journalist, now you're a staff writer, now you're a historian, and now you're an author. So we're really pleased to have had you on the show today. It's been exciting. You've done some exciting coverage for us in Grand Prairie, Texas. I'd like to take this history moment to thank you for that and for catching us in a moment when you'd say, I need a subject. I'm getting ready to write. I feel this writing coming on.
An urge.
An urge. You got to get it done. And we want to thank you very much for sharing your life with us today. And we know it's going to be important to some of the boys and girls that may watch our show because you have been very exciting to us today.
Well, thank you.
Would you like to thank anyone at the Dallas Morning News for letting you come? You have a half minute.
I thank you at the Dallas Morning News for letting me come and speak to this wonderful lady here. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a delight.
Okay, thanks.
And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do and document it